I like to go to church to be married and christened and buried, as the saying is, but I don't keep it up. And I don't force the children to go. If they want to go, they go. Children today have a better education. Unfortunately, mine's not as brainy as some. And if one is bright, it helps the others. But if you're not bright yourself, you can't help them. Terrible, isn't it? Sex is taught more in school than what we had it. We had to find out for ourselves. My mother never told me a thing. She always said she had to find out, so I've got to find out. I tell my daughter whatever she wants to know, because if they know what to stand clear of. Whereas if you don't know nothing, it's inquisitive minds. On a man's wages, if you've only got a man's wages coming in, you've got to make ends meet. You've got to do without things to save for your holiday, otherwise you wouldn't get holiday. It's no good saying, people say, oh, you're well off because you have holiday, but you're not. You've got to save for holiday. I met my husband, George, at my cousin's demo party. We met in the Easter, we was engaged in the June, and we were married in the December. We have no regrets. He's good to me, and what he's got, I've got, and verse vice. The only one thing what we would like is a house of our own, and if I was to win £2,000 or more, I would put it down on a house so that we'd say we've got something of our own that we can ask our friends to. And we're under no obligation.
The housing really shows the change most. You just have to look at this area south of the river to see how different it is. It was the war that did it. And a good thing too. The only good thing that ever came out of the war, incidentally. We were bombed terribly. About 15,000 houses were destroyed. And although I believe the councils have rehoused about 25,000, there are still an awful lot of us living in the old houses. The old houses are all right in a way, except that they don't have bathrooms, and we all want bathrooms. It's not very nice for a man when he comes home dirty to have to get his wife and kids out of the way so that he can clean up in the kitchen. And it's an awful expense going to the bars. I suppose all of us want to own our own houses, but I don't think there's much chance of that. The old days were terrible days, certainly they were. But when you look back, you always remember the best parts of the bad. Look at the things you've lost. Neighbourliness. I think television has a lot to do with that. That and the women working. People living in flats. They come in, there's no time, is there? Look at the old gardens. They're so close together that it was as natural as breathing to have a chat while you were hanging out the clothes. But look at those big blocks. How would you know if anyone was sick or needed help? When I was a boy, if my mother was sick, she'd say, George, run down the street and get Mrs. So-and-so. She'll help, and she would. Even with all the things that's wrong with the old houses, most of us would rather live in a house, renting it, that is, than go in flats. I don't say I'd mind, but my wife would. She says she'd hate flats. What other people don't realise is that we've always lived like this. It's a sort of traditional way of life, so it's natural we hate change. Everybody hates change, I suppose. And when your father and your grandfather and all your people have lived in a certain way, well, you just can't make people change very quickly. The bad old days were terrible old days. It's a funny thing, but just because the housing is better, the old neighbourliness has gone. You had to come out to breathe because the old houses were so bad. So you talk to your neighbours, naturally. Now you live inside in your own world with your television. And you don't know what's happening to people, except that what used to be happening, I hope and trust, will never be allowed to happen again. It was terrible, the state things were allowed to get into. Unbelievable when you think of it today. Yet half the people didn't know and didn't care. We were left to get on with it. Things are better, and we're going to keep them better. But this so-called affluent society, or welfare state, or whatever you like to call it, still isn't as good for a lot of people as they like to make it out to be. As I say, there's still a lot to be done.
I certainly would like to be a member of the middle class because I think they're a nice class of person, but, well, we've got to fight for these things.
When I hear people say, oh, the good old days, oh, yes, we were all friends together, yes, but that didn't cover our table or our want. When we look back and think of our experience, it makes you shudder. But I do say today, they're wonderful days. I'm very grateful, and I hope everyone else is.